Hey there, creepy peeps. Welcome to my channel if you're new here, and welcome back if you're returning. I'm gonna be quick on the intro today because it's time to go over all of my favorite books that I read in 2020. So grab a snack, grab some tea, get comfy because this is probably gonna be a longer video. Before we get into all that though, really quick, I wanna thank my creepy patron peeps for supporting my channel. Thank you guys so much. If you wanna find out the perks to being a creepy patron peep, there's a lot of new ones, so you should definitely go check the page out. The link is always in the description. So first off, really quick, I want to talk about my favorite graphic novels / manga that I read in 2020, just because I feel like they're books, but they differ from you know, traditionally written books, right? So I wanted to have them in a category all their own. Coming in at number 3 for the graphic novels / manga is Seance Tea Party by Raymina Yi. I feel like I talked about this one kind of recently. It's a middle grade graphic novel that's just super cute. It's something that I wish was a thing when I was a kid. I just love the idea of the book, which is like balancing getting older with like staying true to yourself. Like you don't have to give up the things that you enjoy just because you're getting older and it's not cool anymore, especially with a main character who is into creepy and spooky things and is also queer. So number 2 is Trick or Treat by Michael Dougherty. I guess that's who we're gonna say the author is. I mean, it is. I don't know why I'm questioning that. I mean, this is a duh. I love the art styles. I love the differing art styles, how there's a whole bunch of different artists that are involved in this. So all of the stories all kind of look different. And I absolutely love like the cool new direction that they took Sam in the second half of the graphic novel. Once we leave the retelling of the original movie and go into new stories. Number 1, ignore the fallen over books because I just removed Uzumaki from my shelf. I'm not well versed in manga, so I don't know like all the different horror mangas out there, but I feel like this one was just so unique in the plot. Like I love seeing people's faces like when I describe it to them. I tell them it's a spiral that possesses a whole town, but it's like that's what happens, and it's that simple and bizarre of a plot that you can't not pick it up when you hear that. It's like you have to at least pick it up and flip through it after hearing that. Also really quick, should have said it at the beginning of the video, but she started moving while I was talking about that last book. Daisy's on the other side of the camera, looking like she regret coming in here to take a nap because I've trapped her in here to film this video. So now on to my favorite books I read in 2020. I'm quite proud of myself in that, just overall, not just in these top 10, but overall I did read a lot of new releases. Normally I'm pretty behind on those things. Obviously not all of these came out in 2020. I just happened to read them in 2020, but there's quite a few new releases in here. So number 10 on my list is The Last Wish by Andrzej Sapkowski. So I wanted to start reading The Witcher to tide me over until like in this interim time between season 1 and season 2, because I watched the show. I loved it so much. And there's like 6 or 7 books. So I figured why not read them? It's basically just a collection of stories that introduce us to The Witcher. So 1 or 2 of the stories were familiar to me because they were included in the show, but there was also a lot of new stories which I hadn't seen before from the show, so that was super fun to read. And I already picked up the next one because I have no idea when season 2 is supposed to be coming out, so for all we know, I could finish the series before it gets here. Number 9 on my list is Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. I love a good Gothic ghost story, and this is a fresh, fun take on that. I love the idea of a literal like Gothic British estate being transplanted into Mexico, which is essentially like what this is. It's an unlikely pairing in terms of like the feeling you get from each thing. If you think of like a dark Gothic castle, you think dark, gloomy, overcast. And then when you think of like Mexico City, which this isn't exactly in Mexico City, but you think bright colors, sunshine, liveliness. The juxtaposition of those things ends up working really well. I really like the characters, even the villains. They were really compelling, and you know, the author makes you feel strongly about them in one way or another. The story also goes in a direction I was not expecting. Not completely out of left field for like a Gothic story, but it still took me by surprise. Number 8 on my list is The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. This one was hit or miss for a lot of people, I noticed. Once the book came out, a lot of people were not feeling it. A lot of people really loved it. I loved The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I can't say I have the same love for the plot as I did for Night Circus, but the characters in this one, oh my god. If you like The Night Circus and you're therefore familiar with Morgenstern's like style of writing, I feel like you're in a good position to read this one, because it's definitely, it takes a while to get into everything. It's a lot of setup. I thought it was worth it, especially to be introduced to the characters. I don't know, I just loved it. I love the atmosphere. Like I said, I love the characters. We have the same kind of like star-crossed lover story as we did in The Night Circus, but this is a gay couple, which is awesome. And as I said earlier in the year about this book, the best way to describe this is it's a book-length love letter to book lovers. Number 7 for me is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I never really thought I was into the dark academia aesthetic. I never read anything that kind of like fit that subgenre, if we're gonna call it that. Oh my gosh, I need more. So suggestions in the comments, please. I've also not read anything by Leigh Bardugo before. I have Six of Crows on, oh, right here on my TBR card. Haven't gone around to it though, so I feel like I had an interesting approach choosing her first adult fiction novel to read, seeing as I haven't read any of her YA, so I wasn't completely sold on this in the first quarter of the book or so, but it's one of those where I'm glad I stuck it out past that point, because it got so good after that. Like the setup was all worth it in the end. Apparently there's also going to be a sequel to this, which I'm really excited for. As I understand it, she intentionally kept it like open-ended because she wasn't sure if she was gonna write a sequel. I'm so glad she is though. And as far as I know, she's not a stranger to duologies, so it could just be a duology, which I'm also okay with because I'm not always into a super long series. Number 6 on my list is A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. It's been a long time since I was as excited about a fantastical world as I am about this one. This was my first foray into the adult sci-fi fantasy section of my store as a reader, and I think it was a really good place to start for anybody else out there who finds that genre of the bookstore intimidating. I don't know if I'm correct in saying this, but this is a high fantasy plot with a low fantasy setting. So it's set in a version of reality that we know. So it's not like, you know, it's not taking place on another planet or anything like that or a different dimension. I feel like that aspect really helped me ease into this genre because it, like I said, it's really intimidating. But the story instantly drew me in. I loved the characters. They're complex, they're compelling. It's so good. I also immediately picked up the sequel. It's a trilogy, I believe. All right, moving into the top half here, number 5 on my list is Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. So when I read Fledgling and was not excited about that, everyone was telling me in the comments how Kindred is her best, and y'all were right. This was so good. I was still dubious after reading Fledgling if I wanted to dive into this. It's got a kind of a casual sci-fi element to it, in that there's time travel, but that's not really the point of the book. Like, it's not a book where it's going to get into the technical aspects of how you can time travel and why it's a thing and all that sort of thing. That worked well for me. Again, as somebody who's not well versed in sci-fi fantasy, I like that it wasn't too technical. Baby steps, people, baby steps. It's a scary story on so many levels, and it brings up topics about race and privilege and racism that I didn't even like consider before. Highly recommend this, especially if you were super excited for the movie Antebellum but were disappointed by it. I feel like this is, while that movie was not an official adaptation, the plots are super similar and this one does it way better. Number 4 on my list is The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. I feel like I've mentioned this a lot recently, but it bears repeating because this book is so good. It reminded me a lot of Ghost Story by Peter Straub, but with a gory kind of, but not quite, creature feature twist to it. The story moves pretty fast without feeling like you're missing anything plot-wise or in the way of character development. Speaking of, Jones is phenomenal at making you care about every single character in this book, which just makes your heart race when they start getting into dangerous situations. It's just a really good read. It's a relatively quick read. It's rewarding. Read it. Number 3 on my list is Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. So this was my next step into the adult sci-fi fantasy area after A Darker Shade of Magic. This one is way more like high fantasy in terms of the setting as well as the plot. It was another like kind of stretch for me to kind of get into this genre. If I had to describe this one, I would say it's like Deadpool vibes with like the humor and the wit, but like with a dark medieval, like cool knights in shining armor setting, but in space with lesbians. Like everything about that is like, where do I sign up? I really love the story and especially the characters. I'm a character person. Character development is like paramount for me. And I love these characters. They're complex, they're imperfect as hell, but lovable. Just beautiful. The ending was a super shock to me, not in a bad way, like it didn't just like come out of left field and make me angry. It made sense. Still a little bit heartbreaking, but I immediately on my next shift at work bought the sequel because yeah. Number 2 on my list is Night Film by Marisha Pessl. It literally feels like ages ago since I read this. Like, I hardly believe that I read this year. Like, I triple checked my Goodreads. I was like, did I really read this year? It feels like 2 years ago. I loved this book so much. It is so unique in the way it's set up and in the way it's put together with the multimedia elements throughout the book. It really adds to the story and makes you feel like you're trying to solve the mystery along with the characters. It's just an all-around engaging story with a great cast. And dare I say, as much as I love my characters and I really need that character development, I feel like the story is compelling enough that I might have even been okay if the characters were shit. Luckily they were not, but I might have been fine with it. And finally, my favorite book that I read in 2020, quite possibly on the list now of just one of my favorite books ever, is The Changeling by Victor Laval. The sheer amount of people that I hand sold this to at work after I read it. This is by far my favorite book we've picked for Creepy Book Club, and like I said, quite possibly has broken into the top 10 of like my favorite books ever. It absolutely blew me out of the water. The way the plot is constructed is so good, and I feel like it's just the perfect storm of like revealing just enough at just the right time, and just Laval's skill as a writer, because it's a plot that should have annoyed me. Every time a new layer is peeled back, it's like something that we thought was true is not true, or it's not true in the way we thought it was, if that makes sense. Something that I feel like would normally annoy me, but I feel like just the way it's this special combination in this book alone that made me love it. It's heartbreaking, it's scary as fuck, It's brilliant. Definitely pick it up if you want like a mild kind of creature feature aspect. There is technically a monster in the book, but very heavy with like the folklore aspects of it. So if you like that sort of thing, this one. So there you have it. Those are my favorite books that I read in 2020. Of course, please let me know what your favorites were that you read this past year in the comments section. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Daisy, hold it together for 2 seconds while I do this outro. Subscribe if you're new here. Become a creepy peep today. I post 2 new videos. Rude. 2 new videos a week on Wednesdays and Saturdays. So I'll see you very soon with a new video. Until then, stay strange. Bye.